Let's talk about the U.S.'s relationship with Israel.
We stand with Israel.
I love Israel. I love Israel.
The bond between our two countries is unbreakable.
The eternal friendship.
Relationship is very important.
We are you and you are us.
It's a relationship that's always been super close, but it's been getting more attention recently. After Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, and Israel launched its war on Gaza.
The U.S. is moving a tremendous amount of firepower and manpower as a show of support to Israel.
A significant increase in American support.
Basically comparable to a blank check.
No questions asked, not even a debate.
The first thing to know is that the U.S. has supported Israel from the very beginning. Israel declared itself a state in 1948 on land that had previously been Palestine under British control. More than 700,000 Palestinians fled or were forced from their homes. And the U.S. was the first country to recognize Israel. President Truman did it just 11 minutes after its creation. The idea of establishing a nation for Jewish people had been gaining momentum for decades. It was the main goal of a movement called Zionism, which started in the late 1800s. Zionists believed that a Jewish homeland was the only way to ensure safety for Jews, who'd suffered persecution around the world for centuries.
The United States supported the Zionist idea from the very beginning. It was almost natural that the United States would be the first to recognize the existence of the State of Israel.
There was great sympathy for the Zionist project throughout the 1930s and 40s, for example. And of course, after the Holocaust, that was combined with enormous sympathy for the genocide that was carried out against the Jewish people in Europe. And that helped pave the way for Western and particularly American support for the establishment of a Jewish state.
Kennedy laid the foundation for what would later become a closer relationship and one that had a strategic dimension.
That increased exponentially after the 1967 war, when Israel not only fended off Arab states in 6 days, but also managed to conquer land from Jordan, Syria, and Egypt.
And with time, Israel started to offer more and more strategic gains and advantages to the United States.
They've got intelligence gathering abilities that are pretty efficient, and they're also funneling a lot of this information back to the United States.
So what does Israel get out of its relationship with the U.S.? Well, among other things, a lot of money. Since the Second World War, the United States has given more money to Israel than any other country, about $260 billion in total. That included economic aid until 2008, but now the U.S. only gives money for military spending. Israel gets $3.8 billion a year as part of a deal signed by President Obama. These American taxpayer dollars have helped Israel build up one of the most powerful militaries in the world. With the latest American fighter jets and an advanced missile defense system called Iron Dome. But one important thing to know about the money given to Israel is that almost all of it has to be spent in the U.S.
America provides essentially grants for Israel to buy American military hardware.
So it's kind of a self-licking ice cream cone, really. I mean, you give all this money, but it's actually spent on industries that are in key congressional districts.
Another thing about this military aid is that the U.S. really doesn't attach any conditions to it, either in terms of how the weapons are used or as a way to pressure Israel on any of its policies, like the way it treats Palestinians, for example.
Israel essentially is given a blank check with regard to the military hardware, the technology, the resources that the United States provides. There is little or no scrutiny. Theoretically, there are laws in place, for example, the Leahy laws, that U.S. military hardware can only be used for defensive purposes and can't be used in violation of human rights standards. We've never seen those conditions or those provisions applied in the Israeli case.
So how do we explain this blank check approach? Well, some of it comes down to domestic U.S. politics, where generally being pro-Israel pays off politically. And one way to look at that is by looking at public opinion on the Israeli-Palestinian issue. Sympathy for Israelis has consistently polled higher than sympathy for Palestinians, although the gap's been narrowing a bit recently. Something else to consider is that a big voting constituency in the US are evangelical or born-again Christians. They make up about a quarter of the US population, and they are overwhelmingly pro-Israel.
Israel is not a political issue, it's a Bible issue. Israel is the only nation on earth created by a sovereign act of God.
Jewish people are God's chosen people. The Bible says 55 times that land shall be Israel's land forever.
We are talking about millions of people who believe that what is written in the Bible is a pure truth. So if God promised to Abraham that the land of Israel would be his and of his descendants, then this is what should happen.
Well, they were chosen people of God, but not anymore. After disbelief and killing the prophets. It is shame and disappointed to see Christians supporting Israel. While people of Israel doesn't consider as a country or something, it means they were the followers of Israel or children of Israel, that is Jacob. Just see how ignorance are all around.
So you've got all of these elements that feed into the US's relationship with Israel. There's the history, those shared values, strategic interests, religion, and broad public and political support. All of this has sustained the relationship, to the point where some people say it goes pretty much unchallenged. And that's where a lot of the criticism also comes in, especially in the context of Israel's occupation of Palestinian territory and a system that human rights groups have described as apartheid. One view of the US-Israel relationship is that it basically enables this to the detriment of both Palestinians and Israelis.
Because crucial to this relationship is that America is the guarantor of Israeli impunity. We could not be where we are today if America had not got us to a place where there are no costs and consequences internationally, legally, in terms of sanctions, at the UN, etc., for the way Israel treats the Palestinians day in, day out, for generations. And I wonder how much America is waking up to that.
Plenty of people are questioning it, perhaps more than before.
Biden, you can't hide! Biden, you can't hide!
The United States of America provides $3.8 billion every year to Israel. We have a right to say, sorry, you need a new military strategy.
But whether that will translate into any tangible change is something else.
Congress is still overwhelmingly in line with the traditional pro-Israel stance that is largely uncritical and in many cases hostile toward Palestinians.
A lot will depend on how the Gaza war plays out, what Israel does next, and how the US government responds.